In the bustling heart of London during the spring of 1834, the city was alive with anticipation and intrigue. The grand exhibition hall of the Royal Academy was awash with the vibrant hues of freshly hung canvases, their gilded frames catching the light of countless gas lamps that illuminated the bustling crowd. It was an evening destined to be etched in the annals of art history, for the exhibition promised not only the finest works of contemporary painters, but also a spectacle that would defy explanation and challenge the very boundaries between art and life. Mr. Edmund Carlyle, the venerable curator of the Royal Academy, stood near the entrance, his gaze sweeping over the assembled guests. Among the aristocrats, artists, and critics, there was an undercurrent of excitement mixed with an unspoken curiosity. Carlyle, a man whose life had been devoted to the stewardship of art and its mysteries, felt a peculiar tension in the air, one that hinted at more than mere admiration for the displayed works. The evening was to unveil a painting that had stirred whispers even before its arrival. A portrait of a young woman named Eliza, rendered with such exquisite detail by the enigmatic artist Jonathan Harrow that some claimed it possessed an uncanny vitality. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The portrait hung prominently in the gallery's central hall, its frame ornate with carved floral motifs that seemed almost to breathe with the life of the subject. Eliza was portrayed seated on a delicate chaise longue, her pale complexion illuminated by a soft golden light that seemed to emanate from within the canvas itself. Her eyes, a striking shade of cerulean, held a gaze that was at once inviting and inscrutable. The painting was the culmination of months of secrecy, with Harrow refusing to divulge the identity of his muse or the inspiration behind the work. Rumors swirled that Eliza was no ordinary sitter, but something, or someone, far more extraordinary. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere grew charged with anticipation. Attendees whispered in hushed tones, casting furtive glances at the portrait, as if expecting the painted figure to shift or breathe beneath the layers of oil and varnish. It was then, amid the murmur of the crowd and the flicker of candlelight, that the unimaginable occurred. From the depths of the canvas, as if summoned by the collective gaze of the onlookers, Eliza stepped forth. The room fell into stunned silence. Eliza's movement was fluid yet ethereal. Her form emerged with an otherworldly grace that defied the solidity of flesh and bone. She descended from the frame, the hem of her embroidered gown brushing the polished floor, and blinked as if awakening from a long slumber. Her eyes, identical to those captured on canvas, scanned the room with a mixture of wonder and confusion. Mr. Carlyle, ever the composed guardian of the Academy's treasures, felt his breath catch in his throat. He had witnessed countless marvels of art and nature, but never had he beheld a scene so surreal. In his detailed account, later penned in his private journals, he described Eliza as a living portrait, a being conjured from pigment and light, transcending the mortal bounds of paint and canvas. His observations were corroborated by no fewer than 17 witnesses, including noted artists and patrons, each of whom attested to the veracity of the event with unshaken conviction. The initial shock gave way to a mixture of awe and trepidation. Some guests reached out hesitantly, their fingers trembling as they sought to touch the apparition, only to find warmth and substance where once there had been only oil and wood. Others murmured prayers or invoked the name of the supernatural, grappling with the implications of a painted figure come to life. The air was thick with the scent of turpentine and candle wax, mingling with the palpable energy of a moment that seemed to straddle the realms of reality and fantasy. Eliza herself was silent at first, her lips parting in a delicate attempt to speak, but no words emerged. Instead, she raised a hand to her chest, fingers tracing the contours of the embroidered bodice she wore, as if seeking to affirm her own existence. Her eyes reflected an intelligence and awareness that belied her sudden appearance, suggesting a consciousness awakened beyond the confines of the canvas. Carlyle noted that her gaze seemed to hold a profound sadness, as though she carried memories from a world beyond the gallery's walls. The setting of this extraordinary event was no mere backdrop, but a character in its own right. London in 1834 was a city in flux, caught between the fading shadows of Georgian elegance and the burgeoning promise of Victorian progress. The Royal Academy itself stood as a bastion of tradition and innovation, its marble pillars and sweeping staircases a testament to the enduring power of art to capture human experience. The exhibition had drawn an eclectic crowd, aristocrats eager to display their cultural capital, artists hungry for inspiration, and scholars intent on unraveling the mysteries of creativity. Amid this cultural ferment, the appearance of Eliza was both a marvel and a challenge. It defied the era's understanding of art as a static medium, suggesting instead a dynamic interplay between creation and reality. Carlyle's journals reveal his internal struggle to reconcile the event with the scientific and philosophical knowledge of the day. He pondered whether Eliza was a manifestation of spiritualism, a fledgling science gaining traction among London's intellectual elite, or an unprecedented act of artistic genius bordering on the miraculous. The portrait's creator, Jonathan Harrow, was a figure shrouded in enigma. Known for his reclusive nature and meticulous technique, Harrow had rarely exhibited his works publicly. His reputation rested on a handful of striking portraits that seemed to capture not just the likeness, but the very essence of their subjects. Yet none had prepared the public for the living canvas that was Eliza. When questioned, Harrow offered no explanation, merely stating that his art sought to bridge the chasm between the seen and the unseen. As the evening wore on, Eliza gradually began to move with more confidence, her steps echoing softly against the marble floor. She approached the assembled guests with a tentative grace, her presence both mesmerizing and unsettling. Some attendees reported feeling an almost hypnotic pull, as if drawn into a dreamlike state by her gaze. Others whispered that her skin bore a subtle iridescence, a shimmer that defied natural light. Carlyle recorded these accounts with a mixture of skepticism and wonder, recognizing that the night's events would challenge conventional wisdom for years to come. Among the witnesses was Lady Miriam Ashcroft, a noted patron of the arts whose detailed letters to her sister provide a vivid portrayal of the scene. She described Eliza as a creature born of light and shadow, whose very existence seemed to question the boundaries of our reality. Lady Ashcroft's testimony adds a layer of social context, revealing how the event rippled through London's elite circles, sparking debates that ranged from scientific inquiry to metaphysical speculation. In the days that followed, the story of Eliza's emergence spread beyond the confines of the Royal Academy. Newspapers and pamphlets circulated accounts of the living portrait, some dismissing it as a clever illusion or a trick of light, others proclaiming it a divine miracle. The public was captivated by the mystery, flocking to the exhibition in hopes of witnessing the phenomenon firsthand. Carlyle, ever the diligent chronicler, continued to document every detail, understanding that the events unfolding before him were more than a mere curiosity. They were a doorway to uncharted realms of human experience. This extraordinary moment in London's cultural history, captured through the eyes of Edmund Carlyle and an array of eyewitnesses, set the stage for a tale that would weave together art, science, and the supernatural. It was a phenomenon that challenged the Victorian era's grasp of reality and invited all who beheld it to reconsider the power of imagination and the mysteries hidden within the painted surface. As Eliza moved beyond the frame and into the world, the line between creation and creator, between observer and observed, began to blur in ways that no one could have anticipated. The emergence of Eliza from Jonathan Harrow's portrait did not occur in a vacuum. It was deeply entwined with the cultural and intellectual atmosphere of Victorian London, an era captivated by the unexplained and the mystical. The year 1834 found the city in the throes of a burgeoning fascination with spiritualism, mesmerism, and the supernatural, movements that promised to unveil hidden dimensions of existence beyond the material world. This fascination provided fertile ground for the extraordinary event at the Royal Academy to ignite imaginations and provoke profound questions about the nature of reality and art. Victorian society, caught between the certainties of Enlightenment rationalism and the allure of spiritual mysteries, was ripe for phenomena that blurred these boundaries. The upper classes, including influential patrons of the arts and members of the burgeoning scientific community, often found themselves drawn to seances, mesmerist demonstrations, and the study of psychic phenomena. It was an age where the proliferation of scientific societies and spiritualist circles coexisted uneasily, each challenging dominant paradigms in their quest for deeper truths. This context shaped the reception of Eliza's inexplicable manifestation, as many sought to interpret her existence through the lens of these competing worldviews. The painting itself was the product of an intense and secretive creative process. Jonathan Harrow, known for his meticulous craftsmanship and reclusive tendencies, had been commissioned by an anonymous patron to produce a portrait unlike any other. The sitter was a young woman named Eliza, whose identity was shrouded in mystery. Harrow's studio, tucked away in a narrow alley of Bloomsbury, was said to be filled with curious artifacts and strange devices, fueling speculation that his artistry was infused with elements beyond traditional techniques. When the first public viewing of the portrait was announced, those familiar with Harrow's reputation anticipated a work of remarkable skill. Yet none could have foreseen the living enchantment that would unfold. The painting's style combined classical portraiture with subtle innovations, layers of translucent glaze, delicate brushwork that captured the play of light and shadow across Eliza's features, and an almost hypnotic intensity in her eyes. These elements coalesced into an image that seemed less a static likeness and more a window into a living soul. As the exhibition commenced, it was during the initial moments of the evening that Eliza's movement startled the assembled crowd. The shift from painted stillness to animated presence defied all known artistic conventions and scientific understanding. Witnesses reported that the transformation was gradual, beginning with a faint ripple across the canvas's surface, akin to a disturbed pool of water, before Eliza's form emerged fully into the gallery space. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of disbelief, wonder, and a palpable sense of the uncanny. The event quickly attracted the attention of scholars and thinkers, intrigued by the intersection of art, science, and the supernatural. Among them was Professor Alistair Vance, a Cambridge academic specializing in early optical phenomena and the nascent field of visual perception. Vance approached the phenomenon with a cautious yet open mind, proposing that the portrait might represent an experimental convergence of artistic mastery and emerging scientific principles. He speculated that Harrow's techniques could involve manipulation of light, pigment properties, or even early photographic methods, though the latter remained in its infancy. Vance's inquiries led him to Harrow's studio, where he encountered a labyrinth of sketches, notes, and esoteric texts. The artist's journals hinted at an obsession with capturing the essence of life itself, referencing philosophical treatises on the soul and the alchemical traditions that sought to transmute matter into spirit. These writings suggested that Harrow's work was not merely artistic, but a deliberate attempt to bridge the material and immaterial worlds through his craft. The studio contained devices resembling primitive projectors and lenses, but their purpose remained enigmatic. Parallel to Vance's scientific investigation, spiritualist circles saw in Eliza a potential confirmation of their beliefs. Reverend Thomas Gray, a prominent figure in London's spiritualist movement, proclaimed the manifestation as evidence of spirits crossing into the living realm. He organized gatherings at the Academy, inviting mediums and clairvoyants to attempt communication with Eliza, hoping to discern her origin and purpose. These sessions yielded conflicting testimonies. Some claimed Eliza was a benevolent spirit trapped within the confines of paint, while others warned of a restless entity seeking release. Public reaction was a complex tapestry woven from fascination, skepticism, and fear. The press was divided. Conservative papers dismissed the phenomenon as a hoax or mass hysteria, while progressive journals celebrated it as a breakthrough in understanding life and art. Letters to the editor flooded with theories ranging from the scientific to the supernatural, reflecting the era's broader tensions between faith and reason. The social elite debated the implications in salons and drawing rooms, their conversations tinged with both excitement and apprehension. Within this milieu, Eliza's own behavior added layers to the mystery. Though initially silent and hesitant, she displayed moments of awareness and curiosity that suggested a consciousness awakened beyond the realm of paint. Observers noted her attempts to mimic gestures, her eyes following the movement of visitors, and an inexplicable sensitivity to music and light. These traits fueled speculation that she was more than a spectral apparition, that she might embody a new form of life, born from artistic creation itself. The Victorian fascination with animation and lifelike representation was not new. The era had seen the rise of automata, mechanical figures designed to imitate human movement and expression, and a growing interest in photography's ability to capture fleeting moments. Yet Eliza's emergence transcended these technological marvels, presenting a living, breathing presence that challenged definitions of life and art. The cultural currents of the time, steeped in both wonder and skepticism, found in her a symbol of the era's hopes and anxieties. Amid the swirl of public attention, Jonathan Harrow remained an elusive figure. He granted few interviews, offering cryptic remarks that only deepened the enigma. In one rare statement, he mused, "Art is the language of the soul made visible. Perhaps in this work, the soul has found a voice beyond brush and canvas." His reluctance to explain or control the phenomenon left many to wonder whether he was a visionary artist, a charlatan, or something altogether different. The Royal Academy itself became a focal point for debates about the nature of art and its capacity to transcend reality. Curators and critics grappled with questions raised by Eliza's appearance. Was the portrait a living being, a spirit inhabiting a painted form, or a miraculous fusion of art and matter? These inquiries stirred philosophical discussions about the boundaries between creator and creation, observer and observed, and the essence of human experience as captured through artistic expression. Lady Miriam Ashcroft's correspondence continued to provide a vivid social lens on the phenomenon. She described how the story of Eliza permeated London's cultural salons, inspiring poets and playwrights to explore themes of life emerging from art. Some theorists posited that Eliza represented a new kind of muse, transcending mortal constraints and embodying the collective imagination of the age. Others feared that such manifestations might herald an unsettling breach between the natural world and realms beyond comprehension. In the days following the exhibition's opening, the discourse surrounding Eliza grew increasingly complex. Scientific circles debated the possibility of undiscovered physical forces at play, while spiritualists intensified their efforts to communicate with her and interpret her significance. The public remained captivated, and the Royal Academy found itself at the center of an unprecedented cultural phenomenon that defied categorization. Through the lens of Victorian society's fascination with spiritualism and the supernatural, the portrait of Eliza became more than a work of art. It was a living enigma that invited all who encountered it to reconsider the limits of perception, the mysteries of creation, and the enduring human yearning to glimpse the unseen. The intersection of artistic innovation, scientific curiosity, and metaphysical speculation coalesced in a moment that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the gallery, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of Eliza's origin and the forces that brought her to life. In the days that followed Eliza's startling emergence from the canvas, Mr. Edmund Carlyle found himself compelled to investigate the portrait's origins and the true nature of the young woman who had stepped into the world. His position as curator required not only stewardship of the Royal Academy's collections, but also a duty to understand and preserve the integrity of such an unprecedented phenomenon. Carlyle's inquiries led him first to the shadowed quarters of Jonathan Harrow's studio, a place rumored among artists and scholars to be as enigmatic as the man himself. Harrow's studio, nestled in a narrow Bloomsbury alley, was a cramped and cluttered space, suffused with the scent of oil paint, varnish, and old parchment. Upon entering, Carlyle was struck by the palpable atmosphere of secrecy and obsession. The walls were lined with sketches, some of faces and figures that seemed hauntingly familiar, others abstract and swirling with strange symbols. Among these were detailed studies of Eliza's likeness, each capturing subtle shifts in expression and posture, as if Harrow had sought to capture not just a physical form, but a living essence. Carlyle's attention was drawn to several notebooks bound in worn leather, their pages filled with meticulous annotations in Harrow's precise hand. The writings revealed a man consumed by the desire to transcend the limits of conventional portraiture. Harrow had studied not only anatomy and technique, but also delved into obscure philosophical and alchemical texts that spoke of imbuing objects with life or spirit. One passage in particular referenced the ancient belief in the anima picturae, the soul of the painting, that might, under certain conditions, awaken and assume form. The curator's investigation extended beyond the studio to seek information about Eliza herself. Attempts to uncover her identity met with frustration. No records or acquaintances could be found that corresponded to the mysterious woman. Local parish registries held no mention of an Eliza matching her description, and inquiries among London's social circles yielded only vague references to a woman of uncommon beauty and poise who had vanished months before. This absence of a tangible past deepened the enigma surrounding her, suggesting she might be more than a mere mortal brought to life. Witness testimonies added further nuance to Carlyle's understanding of Eliza's state. Those who had observed her closely described a being grappling with the bewildering transition from painted image to animate presence. Initially, she exhibited confusion and fear, occasionally recoiling as if startled by the physicality of her surroundings. Her movements were tentative, almost hesitant, revealing a fragile awareness of the world beyond the frame. Yet as hours turned into days, Eliza began to display signs of curiosity and a cautious desire to connect. A notable account came from Margaret Fenton, a young artist and assistant at the Academy, who spent several hours attempting to communicate with Eliza. Margaret described the difficulty of bridging the gulf between Eliza's silent, expressive gaze and the spoken word. Eliza's attempts at speech were limited to soft murmurs and fragmented sounds, suggesting a nascent understanding of language rather than mastery. Margaret's sketches captured this evolving awareness. Drawings of Eliza's hands reaching out, tentative smiles, and eyes that seemed to search for meaning in the flickering candlelight. Carlyle's journals also recorded instances where Eliza engaged in behaviors that hinted at a deeper cognition. She was observed tracing her fingers along the gallery walls, as if memorizing textures, and responding to music played by visiting musicians with subtle changes in expression. There were moments when she seemed to recognize familiar figures, inclining her head or offering a fleeting smile, though the source of this recognition remained a mystery. These behaviors suggested that Eliza's consciousness was not a mere illusion, but a genuine, if fledgling, form of awareness, adapting to a new reality. Speculation among the Academy's experts ranged widely. Some posited that Eliza was a trapped spirit, a ghost bound to the painted form by forces beyond human understanding. Others suggested she might be an experimental creation, the product of Harrow's alchemical and artistic ambitions, brought to life through unknown means. The notion that Eliza represented a new category of being, a living artwork, began to take hold, challenging prevailing definitions of life and identity. In pursuit of clarity, Carlyle sought the counsel of Professor Alistair Vance, who had earlier examined the portrait from a scientific perspective. Vance's investigations had uncovered peculiar anomalies in the painting's materials, pigments that exhibited unusual luminescence, and a canvas weave that appeared interlaced with fine metallic threads. These findings hinted at an experimental technique, perhaps involving early photochemical processes or undiscovered optical properties. Vance theorized that Harrow's work was a hybrid of art and proto-science, designed to coax life from pigment and canvas. Yet even Vance admitted the limitations of contemporary science in explaining Eliza's existence. The young woman's physical form defied complete categorization. Her skin possessed a texture unlike any living tissue, smooth yet subtly translucent, while her eyes shimmered with an intensity that suggested inner light. Her presence challenged the strict materialism of the age, inviting speculation that she might inhabit a liminal state between the corporeal and the ethereal. Carlyle's further inquiries revealed that Eliza's understanding of the outside world was severely limited. She appeared unaware of common objects and social conventions, often startled by everyday sounds and movements. Her interactions were marked by a childlike innocence, as if she were learning to perceive reality anew. Yet despite this naivety, there was an unmistakable depth to her gaze, an intelligence that hinted at memories or knowledge inaccessible to those around her. An episode recounted by Carlyle involved Eliza's reaction to a mirror held before her face. At first, she recoiled, as if frightened by her own reflection, then gradually reached out to touch the glass, her fingers trembling. She studied her reflection with a mixture of wonder and confusion, as though encountering herself for the first time. This moment encapsulated the profound dislocation Eliza experienced, caught between the permanence of painted image and the mutable realities of physical form. The mystery deepened as Carlyle learned of other portraits by Harrow, bearing similar qualities, though none had exhibited the same phenomenon. These works, scattered in private collections, depicted figures whose eyes seemed to follow the viewer, whose expressions conveyed an uncanny presence. Whether these were precursors to Eliza or merely artistic mastery remained uncertain. Some speculated that Harrow had been engaged in a prolonged experiment, culminating in the living portrait, while others feared darker implications. The question of Eliza's origin persisted as the curator pieced together fragments of information from diverse sources. Some accounts suggested she had been a real woman who disappeared mysteriously, her essence somehow captured and immortalized by Harrow's brush. Others hinted at a supernatural genesis, a being conjured from the collective imagination or the artist's own psyche. Carlyle himself wrestled with the possibility that Eliza was both a creation and a captive, suspended between existence and artifice. Throughout his investigations, Carlyle remained mindful of the ethical dimensions of Eliza's predicament. She was not merely an object of curiosity, but a sentient being, vulnerable and disoriented. The Academy grappled with the responsibility of ensuring her welfare, providing a space where she could adapt while protecting her from exploitation. Discussions arose about whether Eliza should be studied, confined, or allowed freedom, reflecting broader Victorian anxieties about science, spirituality, and the rights of the unknown. In this period of intense scrutiny and reflection, Eliza began to forge tentative connections with those around her. Margaret Fenton's patience and kindness became a lifeline, offering a semblance of trust and companionship. Carlyle's accounts reveal moments when Eliza seemed to respond to affection, her eyes brightening and her lips curving into a gentle smile. These interactions hinted at potential growth beyond the initial bewilderment, suggesting that the living portrait might evolve into a being capable of meaningful engagement. Yet the shadows of uncertainty loomed large. Eliza's silence and fragmented understanding left many questions unanswered. Who was she truly? What force had breathed life into the pigment? And what fate awaited a creature caught between the worlds of art and reality? These questions haunted Carlyle's reflections as he continued his careful documentation, aware that the answers lay buried in mysteries deeper than any canvas could reveal. Thus, the investigation into Eliza's origin and nature opened a new chapter in the unfolding enigma, one that would probe the limits of human knowledge and challenge the very definitions of life, consciousness, and creation. Carlyle's pursuit of truth, fueled by curiosity and compassion, set the stage for a deeper exploration of the forces that had brought Eliza into being and the mysteries that still shrouded her existence. As news of Eliza's emergence from the painted canvas spread beyond the Royal Academy, the phenomenon drew the attention of experts far beyond the artistic community. Scholars specializing in art restoration, early photographic techniques, and even nascent fields of physiology converged upon the gallery, eager to examine the living portrait and uncover the secrets behind her extraordinary existence. Among these specialists was Professor Alistair Vance, whose earlier inquiries had hinted at unusual properties within the painting itself, and who now took a central role in the multidisciplinary examination of Eliza. The scientific inquiry was unprecedented for the era. The assembled experts brought rudimentary instruments, microscopes, magnifying glasses, and primitive chemical reagents to probe both the painting and Eliza's physical form. Their observations revealed anomalies that defied contemporary understanding. Examination of the canvas disclosed layers of pigment applied with extraordinary precision and containing rare minerals that exhibited faint luminescence under gaslight. The metallic threads interwoven with the fabric appeared to be composed of a substance not catalogued in existing chemical texts, sparking speculation about experimental materials or alchemical influences. Turning their attention to Eliza herself, the experts noted peculiarities that distinguished her from any known living being. Her skin, while warm to the touch, had a smoothness and translucency reminiscent of the finest porcelain, yet it bore subtle variations in tone and shimmer that suggested vitality. Under magnification, her flesh revealed an intricate network of fine capillaries, but their arrangement was unlike any documented human anatomy. Her eyes, the most arresting feature, contained iridescent layers that refracted light in complex patterns, producing an almost hypnotic effect on observers. Among the examination team was Dr. Henry Mallory, a pioneering physiologist intrigued by the possibility of life forms that challenged accepted biological principles. Mallory's investigations sought to measure Eliza's heartbeat, respiration, and other vital signs, employing early stethoscopes and rudimentary thermometers. To his astonishment, Eliza's heartbeat was irregular, fluctuating in rhythm and sometimes pausing altogether before resuming, as if governed by an unknown internal mechanism. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, lacking the steady cadence typical of human respiration. Mallory's notes reveal his growing perplexity and cautious awe. He hypothesized that Eliza might represent a novel form of life, neither fully organic nor mechanical, but rather a hybrid entity sustained by forces not yet understood. This hypothesis aligned uneasily with the scientific dogma of the day, prompting heated debates among his colleagues. Some dismissed the findings as artifacts of measurement error or the result of psychological suggestion, while others considered the possibility that Eliza belonged to a category of beings previously unimagined. Parallel to the physiological studies, art restorers undertook a meticulous examination of the portrait itself. They sought to understand the techniques and materials Harrow had employed, hoping to uncover clues that might explain the genesis of the living image. Their analyses revealed a layering technique so refined that the surface of the painting appeared to ripple subtly when viewed from different angles, creating the illusion of movement even before Eliza's emergence. This optical effect was achieved through the application of glazes of varying opacity and hue, combined with delicate brushstrokes that mimicked the play of light on flesh. Professor Vance, intrigued by these findings, proposed that Harrow had harnessed principles akin to those explored in the emerging science of optics. He speculated that the artist's combination of pigment, light, and texture created a dynamic interface between two realms, the painted and the living. Vance's theories extended into speculation about the nature of perception itself, suggesting that the portrait might act as a catalyst, bridging the gap between representation and reality. Adding to the complexity of the inquiry was the introduction of early photographic technology. The daguerreotype, a nascent method of capturing images through chemical processes on metal plates, had recently been introduced in Europe. Some investigators hypothesized that Harrow might have incorporated photographic elements into his painting, infusing it with a latent potential for animation. Samples taken from the canvas revealed traces of silver salts, compounds used in daguerreotype processes, though their precise role remained unclear. The convergence of art, science, and technology in the study of Eliza underscored the era's simultaneous fascination with progress and mystery. The Royal Academy became a crucible where disciplines intersected and clashed, as artists, scientists, and philosophers wrestled with the implications of a living portrait. Their debates extended beyond empirical observations to encompass metaphysical questions about the nature of life, consciousness, and the soul. Throughout these examinations, Eliza remained a figure of serene composure, her behavior oscillating between moments of stillness and subtle responsiveness. Observers noted that she appeared to react to changes in light and sound, adjusting her posture and expression with a fluid grace that defied mechanistic explanation. At times, she seemed to engage in silent communication, her eyes conveying emotion and intent without words. This enigmatic interaction challenged the investigators to consider the possibility that Eliza possessed a form of intelligence and awareness beyond their comprehension. One particularly striking episode involved a demonstration led by Professor Vance, who arranged for a series of musical performances within the gallery. Musicians played delicate compositions on violin and piano, filling the space with melodies that seemed to stir Eliza profoundly. Witnesses described how her features softened, and her eyes glistened with what many interpreted as tears. The emotional response suggested that Eliza's consciousness was not merely reactive, but capable of aesthetic appreciation, a faculty long considered exclusive to humans. The interdisciplinary team also explored the possibility that Eliza's existence was tied to temporal or dimensional anomalies. Some theorists proposed that the portrait functioned as a portal or nexus point, allowing a being from another time or realm to manifest temporarily within the physical world. These speculations drew upon contemporary interest in theories of parallel realities and spectral phenomena, topics that fascinated both scientific and spiritualist circles. Despite the rigor of scientific inquiry, the true nature of Eliza's form remained elusive. The limits of technology and knowledge in 1834 constrained the investigators' ability to definitively categorize her. The portrait and its living subject occupied a liminal space where art and life, matter and spirit, converged in a delicate balance. This ambiguity fueled ongoing fascination and unease, as each new discovery seemed to raise further questions rather than provide answers. Within the Royal Academy, discussions grew increasingly philosophical. Curators and scholars debated whether Eliza should be regarded as a work of art, a living being, or a hybrid of both. The ethical implications of studying and containing such an entity sparked controversy, reflecting broader Victorian concerns about the boundaries of science and the sanctity of life. Some advocated for granting Eliza autonomy and freedom, while others urged caution, fearing unforeseen consequences. Throughout these deliberations, the figure of Professor Alistair Vance loomed large. His blend of scientific rigor and imaginative theorizing made him both a respected and contentious voice. Vance argued that Eliza represented a breakthrough in understanding the interplay between perception, materiality, and consciousness, suggesting that future advances might unlock the mysteries she embodied. His writings, circulated among learned societies, inspired a new generation of scholars to explore the intersections of art, science, and the metaphysical. As the investigation continued, the public's fascination with Eliza deepened. The gallery became a pilgrimage site for those eager to witness the living portrait, while artists and writers found in her a muse that transcended traditional categories. Eliza's presence challenged the Victorian worldview, inviting all who encountered her to reconsider the nature of existence and the possibilities that lay beyond the painted surface. In this crucible of inquiry and wonder, the living portrait stood at the crossroads of 19th-century thought, an enigma that defied classification and beckoned toward new horizons of understanding. The efforts of the scientists, artists, and philosophers who gathered around Eliza laid the groundwork for questions that would resonate far beyond the walls of the Royal Academy, challenging the limits of human knowledge and imagination. In the weeks following the intensive examinations by scientists and art experts, Eliza began to move beyond the confines of the Royal Academy's gallery, exploring the world outside the frame, with a childlike curiosity that both fascinated and unsettled those who observed her. Her tentative steps into the bustling streets of London marked a new chapter in the unfolding mystery, revealing dimensions of her existence that challenged not only the boundaries of art and science, but the very fabric of human experience. Eliza's first ventures beyond the Academy were carefully supervised by Mr. Edmund Carlyle and a small group of trusted attendants, including Margaret Fenton, whose patience and empathy had become a vital bridge between the living portrait and the world she was beginning to navigate. The city's noises, scents, and movements overwhelmed Eliza at times. The clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the murmur of crowds, and the flickering gas lamps all presented stimuli unfamiliar and bewildering to a being whose prior existence had been confined to the stillness of painted canvas. Observers noted that Eliza's demeanor combined wonder with apprehension. She would pause frequently, eyes wide, as she took in the shifting colors of the marketplace or the play of sunlight through the leaves in St. James's Park. Her hands reached out instinctively to touch textures, the rough bark of a tree, the smooth surface of a brass railing, seeking to understand the physicality of her surroundings. These moments revealed her as a nascent consciousness, grappling with the sensory overload of a world both new and disorienting. Margaret Fenton, in her detailed journals, described Eliza's attempts to communicate as both poignant and frustrating. Though words remained elusive, Eliza began to employ gestures and rudimentary drawings to express her thoughts and feelings. She sketched simple shapes and symbols on scraps of paper, a process that seemed to awaken a flicker of recognition and purpose. These drawings, while primitive, revealed a burgeoning awareness and a desire to connect beyond the silent gaze that had characterized her initial appearances. At the Academy, Eliza's exploration extended to the artistic realm itself. She showed a surprising aptitude for sketching and painting, using charcoal and watercolors with a tentative but growing skill. Her works often depicted abstract forms, swirling patterns, geometric shapes, and enigmatic symbols that defied easy interpretation, but suggested an inner world rich with emotion and meaning. Some scholars proposed that these creations were attempts to recreate or make sense of her own existence, while others speculated that they might encode messages or knowledge beyond human comprehension. The public's fascination with Eliza intensified as word spread of her excursions and artistic endeavors. Visitors to the Academy came not only to witness the living portrait, but to engage with a figure who seemed to embody the intersection of innocence and mystery. Yet with admiration came unease. Some feared that Eliza's presence was unnatural, a disruption of the natural order, while others viewed her as a miracle, a bridge between life and art that offered glimpses into hidden realms. Eliza's behavior also revealed moments of distress and confusion. The complexities of human society, the unspoken rules, the cacophony of voices, the conflicting emotions of those around her, often overwhelmed her fragile psyche. On several occasions, she was observed retreating into silence, her eyes clouded with fear or sorrow. These episodes underscored the precariousness of her existence, caught between the permanence of the painted image and the fluidity of living experience. A particularly telling incident occurred during a visit to a crowded theater, where Eliza was exposed to the dramatic performances of the day. As actors portrayed tales of love, loss, and heroism, Eliza's expressions shifted with the unfolding emotions on stage. She wept silently during scenes of tragedy and smiled with delight at moments of joy. This empathetic response suggested a capacity for emotional resonance, challenging assumptions that her consciousness was purely mechanical or illusory. Yet communication remained a barrier. Eliza's attempts to speak were limited to fragmented syllables and sounds, often resembling the early babbling of a child. Carlyle and Margaret worked tirelessly to teach her language, employing repetitive lessons and visual aids. Progress was slow but steady. Eliza began to understand simple commands and respond to familiar words, hinting at a cognitive development unfolding in real time. The question of Eliza's identity and origins persisted as a source of speculation and debate. Some theorists posited that she was a spirit somehow trapped within the painting, struggling to reclaim a lost human form. Others suggested she was an experimental creation, an amalgamation of art and science brought to life through techniques now lost to history. The possibility that Eliza represented a new form of consciousness, neither wholly human nor merely an artistic construct, gained traction among more progressive thinkers. Amid these debates, Eliza's impact on the artistic community was profound. Her presence inspired a wave of creativity, with painters, poets, and musicians seeking to capture or respond to the living portrait's enigmatic existence. Some viewed her as a muse who transcended mortal limitations, embodying the fusion of imagination and reality. Others feared that such a being destabilized the foundations of artistic tradition, blurring distinctions between creator and creation. Eliza herself seemed to navigate this complex terrain with a mixture of innocence and tentative agency. She formed bonds with a small circle of caretakers and artists who provided guidance and protection, offering glimpses of affection and trust in return. These relationships became vital anchors amid the swirling uncertainties that defined her existence. The public's fascination was matched by official concern. Authorities debated the implications of harboring a living portrait whose nature defied classification. Discussions arose about the ethics of study and containment, balancing scientific curiosity against respect for Eliza's autonomy. These tensions reflected broader Victorian anxieties about the rapid pace of progress and the limits of human understanding. Throughout her explorations, Eliza exhibited an uncanny sensitivity to light, color, and sound. She responded to music with subtle movements, sometimes swaying gently or closing her eyes in apparent absorption. Her drawings often incorporated motifs inspired by natural forms and geometric patterns, hinting at an intuitive grasp of aesthetics. These behaviors suggested that her consciousness was attuned not only to the external world, but to an inner realm of sensory and emotional experience. Eliza's journey beyond the painted frame continued to unfold as a delicate balance between discovery and vulnerability. Her childlike curiosity opened windows into a world previously inaccessible to her, while her moments of confusion and fear underscored the fragility of her existence. The interplay of these forces captivated those around her, drawing them into a shared exploration of what it meant to be alive, to perceive, and to create. In this period of tentative growth and adaptation, Eliza became more than a living portrait. She emerged as a symbol of the unknown possibilities that lay at the intersection of art, life, and consciousness. Her presence challenged assumptions and invited reflection on the nature of identity and the mysteries that reside just beyond the limits of understanding. As she continued to navigate the complexities of the world around her, Eliza's story unfolded as a poignant testament to the enduring power of curiosity and the human yearning to bridge the divide between the imagined and the real. As Eliza's presence within London's social and cultural spheres grew ever more pronounced, the attention of governmental and scientific authorities quickly shifted from cautious curiosity to urgent concern. The phenomenon of a living portrait, an entity that defied classification, exhibiting signs of consciousness and life beyond known natural laws, posed questions that unsettled not only the popular imagination, but the very foundations of Victorian society. Consequently, a formal intervention was undertaken, marking a decisive turn in the handling of Eliza's existence. The British government, wary of the potential ramifications of Eliza's continued public exposure, established a commission charged with investigating the phenomenon and determining appropriate measures for study and containment. This body, known as the Commission for Phenomenal Entities, was led by Sir Reginald Pritchard, a distinguished civil servant with experience in managing delicate scientific and political matters. Pritchard's appointment signaled the gravity accorded to the situation by the highest levels of authority. Upon assuming oversight, the Commission moved swiftly to restrict access to Eliza, citing concerns for both her welfare and public order. The Royal Academy, once a place of open exhibition, was effectively closed to the general public, and security measures were implemented to control visitation. Eliza herself was relocated to a secluded wing of the Academy, converted into a controlled environment where access was limited to approved personnel. This confinement, while deemed necessary by authorities, marked the beginning of a contentious debate over her rights and status. The Commission assembled a diverse panel of experts, including leading scientists, philosophers, and theologians, to deliberate on Eliza's nature and the implications of her existence. Official documents from these sessions, many of which would remain classified for decades, reveal a spectrum of opinions. Some members argued that Eliza was a scientific anomaly, potentially the product of unknown physical or chemical processes, warranting rigorous study under controlled conditions. Others contended that she represented a supernatural entity, a spirit or manifestation beyond empirical scrutiny, necessitating spiritual intervention. Sir Reginald Pritchard himself maintained a pragmatic stance, emphasizing the need for empirical investigation while acknowledging the profound uncertainties involved. His reports to Parliament underscored the potential risks of unregulated public exposure, including social panic and the exploitation of Eliza for commercial or political ends. The Commission's mandate thus balanced scientific inquiry with containment, reflecting the era's cautious approach to phenomena that challenged established norms. The conditions of Eliza's confinement were described in contemporaneous correspondence as both protective and isolating. The chamber allotted to her was adorned with familiar furnishings, replicas of those depicted in the original portrait, and items introduced to provide sensory stimulation. Caretakers, including Margaret Fenton and select medical personnel, were tasked with monitoring her physical and psychological state. Despite these measures, observers noted that the restriction of her movements and social interactions appeared to exacerbate episodes of distress and withdrawal. Scientific examinations continued under the Commission's auspices, with teams conducting regular assessments of Eliza's vital signs, cognitive responses, and behavioral patterns. Advances in instrumentation allowed for more precise measurements of her physiological anomalies, deepening the mystery of her existence. Reports documented fluctuations in her heartbeat and respiration, as well as shifts in skin temperature and responsiveness to stimuli, suggesting a complex internal regulation not fully understood. Beyond the physiological, the Commission sought to explore Eliza's cognitive abilities and potential for communication. Linguists and psychologists were enlisted to develop methods for teaching her language and interpreting her gestures and symbols. Progress remained slow, though incremental improvements in her comprehension and expression were recorded. The debates within the Commission often centered on the ethical considerations of such studies, weighing the pursuit of knowledge against respect for Eliza's autonomy. Religious and philosophical voices contributed to the discourse, reflecting Victorian society's struggle to reconcile faith with emerging scientific paradigms. Some theologians posited that Eliza's existence was a test of spiritual belief, a tangible manifestation of the soul's immortality or divine power. Others cautioned against attributing supernatural causes without rigorous evidence, advocating for a cautious and open-minded approach. These divergent perspectives influenced the Commission's deliberations, underscoring the cultural tensions of the period. The public reaction to the Commission's intervention was mixed. While some expressed relief that the government was taking responsible measures, others decried the secrecy and limitations placed on access to Eliza. Pamphlets and letters circulated, alleging mistreatment or conspiracies to suppress knowledge, fueling rumors and speculation. Spiritualist groups intensified efforts to gain contact with Eliza, organizing petitions and public demonstrations that pressured authorities to reconsider restrictive policies. Within the walls of the Academy, the atmosphere grew charged with a blend of scientific rigor and moral unease. Caretakers reported that Eliza's demeanor fluctuated. Moments of engagement and curiosity alternated with periods of apparent confusion and despair. The isolation imposed by the Commission's protocols seemed to deepen her sense of dislocation, raising questions about the psychological impact of confinement on a being whose origins and needs were still poorly understood. Amid these complexities, Sir Reginald Pritchard sought to balance competing demands. His correspondence reveals efforts to establish guidelines governing the dissemination of information about Eliza, aiming to prevent sensationalism while promoting responsible scholarship. The Commission commissioned detailed reports and maintained a classified archive of findings, intending to preserve knowledge for future generations, even as immediate access was curtailed. The intervention also sparked introspection within the scientific community. Some researchers questioned whether the prevailing frameworks of biology, physics, and psychology were adequate to comprehend Eliza's existence. Calls emerged for interdisciplinary approaches that integrated metaphysical inquiry, artistic interpretation, and empirical study. This intellectual ferment foreshadowed later developments in fields exploring consciousness and the nature of reality. Despite the constraints imposed, Eliza continued to exhibit signs of adaptation and growth. Caretakers documented moments when she responded to familiar faces with recognition, when her attempts at speech gained clarity, and when her artistic expressions deepened in complexity. These instances provided hope that, even within confinement, Eliza's consciousness was evolving, and that she might one day bridge the gulf between her enigmatic origins and the world she inhabited. The Commission's work, while marked by tension and uncertainty, established a framework for the ongoing study of Eliza, a framework that balanced curiosity with caution, knowledge with respect. It underscored the broader Victorian challenge of grappling with phenomena that defied easy categorization and demanded new ways of thinking about life, identity, and the unknown. Thus, the institutional response to Eliza's existence encapsulated the era's ambivalence toward the extraordinary, a blend of fascination, fear, and the desire for control. The measures enacted shaped the trajectory of her story, influencing not only her immediate circumstances, but the unfolding legacy of the living portrait, as a symbol of the enigmatic interplay between art, science, and the human spirit. On a tempestuous night in late autumn, when the winds howled through the streets of London and rain lashed against the windows of the Royal Academy, Eliza vanished without warning. The storm's fury seemed to mirror the tumultuous atmosphere within the secluded wing where she had been confined, under the watchful eyes of caretakers and officials alike. This disappearance, sudden and unexplained, plunged all who had been involved in her care into a state of shock and bewilderment. The events of that night were recounted in fragmented and often contradictory testimonies from the handful of attendants present. As the storm intensified around midnight, strange phenomena were reported within the chamber: flickering lights, unexplained shadows, and a low hum that seemed to resonate through the walls. One attendant, Thomas Reynolds, described hearing a whispering voice, delicate yet urgent, though the words were indistinct. Moments later, the heavy wooden door that secured Eliza's quarters was found ajar, and the figure of the living portrait was nowhere to be seen. Efforts to locate Eliza immediately commenced, with guards scouring the Academy's halls and grounds, while search parties fanned out into the surrounding streets. Despite exhaustive inquiries, no trace of her was found. Theories abounded. Some believed she had somehow returned to the painted realm from which she had emerged. Others conjectured that she had been spirited away by mysterious forces or individuals intent on exploiting her unique nature. The mystery of her disappearance deepened, as no physical evidence indicated forced removal or escape. In the days following, witnesses reported strange lights and sounds near the Academy during the hours of the storm. Neighbors spoke of ethereal glows flickering in the windows and faint melodies drifting on the wind, reminiscent of music Eliza had once responded to. These accounts, while dismissed by some as superstition or the product of fearful imagination, lent an otherworldly dimension to the narrative of her vanishing. Compounding the enigma, subtle changes were observed in other artworks housed within the Academy. Paintings that had once been static seemed to exhibit faint movements, shifting expressions, glimmers of light in the eyes, and the suggestion of life stirring beneath their surfaces. Scholars debated whether these phenomena were connected to Eliza's disappearance, proposing that her departure might have unleashed a ripple effect, awakening latent energies within the gallery's collection. The Academy's closure to the public, initially implemented to protect Eliza and preserve order, became indefinite as authorities grappled with the implications of her absence. The Commission for Phenomenal Entities intensified its investigations, commissioning studies into the reported anomalies and seeking explanations grounded in emerging scientific and metaphysical theories. Yet, despite their efforts, the mystery resisted resolution, and official statements remained cautious and circumspect. Among those deeply affected was Mr. Edmund Carlyle, whose custodianship had extended beyond professional duty into personal attachment. His detailed journal entries from this period convey a mixture of grief, frustration, and unresolved questions. Carlyle pondered whether Eliza's disappearance was a form of liberation or a tragic loss, reflecting on the paradox of a being caught between worlds, too real to be dismissed, yet too extraordinary to be confined. Public reaction ranged from despair to fascination. Newspapers speculated wildly, publishing sensational accounts that blurred fact and fiction. Spiritualist circles seized upon the event as evidence of realms beyond mortal comprehension, organizing vigils and seances aimed at contacting Eliza or deciphering messages from the beyond. Conversely, skeptics dismissed the tales as hysteria, cautioning against credulity in the face of unverifiable claims. The disappearance also ignited debates within artistic and scientific communities. Some artists mourned the loss of a muse who had inspired new creative visions, while scientists lamented the sudden halt to studies that might have unveiled revolutionary insights into life and consciousness. Philosophers and theologians engaged in spirited discourse over the nature of existence and the possibility of transcendence, using Eliza's story as a focal point for broader existential questions. Amid the swirling speculation, reports emerged of individuals across Britain experiencing episodes of spontaneous speech in Eliza's uncanny manner, utterances composed of fragmented words, musical cadences, and symbols resembling those she had drawn. These occurrences, often arising during altered states of consciousness, such as dreams or trances, suggested a contagion or resonance of her linguistic pattern beyond her physical presence. The Royal Commission for Linguistic Anomalies was established to investigate these phenomena, documenting numerous cases that defied conventional explanation. Investigators noted a curious pattern. Many individuals who exhibited these episodes reported vivid dreams or visions of Eliza prior to their experiences. These dreams often portrayed the figure of the living portrait, beckoning or communicating through enigmatic symbols. The connection between these subjective experiences and Eliza's disappearance added a layer of complexity to the unfolding mystery, blurring the lines between reality, memory, and imagination. The Commission's findings fueled a theory that Eliza's language and presence possessed a form of mimetic power, a replicable influence transmitted through susceptible minds. This notion challenged existing paradigms of linguistics and psychology, suggesting that the living portrait's essence might persist beyond corporeal form, embedded in the collective consciousness of those touched by her story. Efforts to trace Eliza's whereabouts continued sporadically over subsequent months, with occasional reports of shadowy figures glimpsed near the academy or in remote locales. None were substantiated, and many were dismissed as products of wishful thinking or urban legend. The lack of definitive evidence maintained the aura of mystery, cementing Eliza's disappearance as one of the most perplexing enigmas of the era. The unfolding aftermath of her vanishing set in motion a chain of events that extended beyond the immediate circle of witnesses and authorities. The Royal Academy, once a place of artistic reverence and scientific inquiry, became a locus of whispered tales and guarded secrets. The subtle transformations observed in other artworks hinted at forces beyond comprehension, suggesting that Eliza's influence might endure in ways yet unimagined. In the absence of Eliza herself, her story took on a life of its own, woven into the fabric of Victorian folklore, inspiring artists, writers, and dreamers. The living portrait came to symbolize the fragile boundary between creation and creator, between the perceived world and the mysteries that lie just beyond. Her disappearance, far from closing the narrative, opened new avenues of exploration into the nature of reality, language, and the enduring power of the unseen. In the wake of Eliza's mysterious disappearance from the Royal Academy, a curious and unsettling phenomenon began to sweep across Europe, rippling far beyond the confines of London's art world. Reports emerged of similar occurrences involving other paintings, sculptures, and artistic creations, instances where artworks appeared to exhibit signs of animation, transformation, or inexplicable alteration. These events, though varied in nature and intensity, collectively challenged prevailing notions of art as a static medium and suggested the presence of a deeper, perhaps supernatural, force at work. Across galleries and private collections, eyewitnesses recounted moments when portraits seemed to shift their gaze, Statues subtly changed their posture, and paintings whispered faint sounds, all fleeting and often dismissed as tricks of light or imagination. Yet the frequency and distribution of these reports defied coincidence. In Paris, a portrait displayed at the Louvre was said to have smiled at a visitor. In Vienna, a marble bust reportedly shed tears in the moonlight. In Rome, frescoes altered their imagery overnight. These accounts sparked both fascination and dread, igniting debates among artists, scientists, and spiritualists alike. The artistic community found itself divided. Some embraced these manifestations as signs of a new era in which art transcended its traditional boundaries to become a living, dynamic force. Innovators and avant-garde painters drew inspiration from the phenomena, incorporating themes of animation and transformation into their works. Others, however, regarded the occurrences with fear and suspicion, worrying that the sanctity and permanence of art were under threat. The debate touched upon fundamental questions about creativity, authorship, and the ontology of art itself. Scientific circles responded with a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. Researchers sought to document the phenomena rigorously, employing early photographic techniques and chemical analyses to detect physical changes in the artworks. Laboratories investigated environmental factors, humidity, temperature, light exposure, as potential catalysts for the observed effects. While some anomalies could be attributed to natural causes, many defied explanation, exhibiting characteristics inconsistent with known physical laws. Amid this climate, secret societies and spiritualist groups found fertile ground for their beliefs and practices. Organizations devoted to exploring the supernatural embraced the events as evidence of alternate realities and the permeability of the veil between worlds. Seances, mediumistic sessions, and occult rituals proliferated, often centered around artworks reputed to harbor living essences or spirits. These groups claimed that Eliza's story was but one manifestation of a broader awakening, a resurgence of ancient forces long dormant, yet now stirring within the cultural consciousness. In London, the Royal Commission for Phenomenal Entities expanded its remit to include investigations of these new cases, collaborating with international counterparts in what became an unprecedented transnational effort. Reports were meticulously catalogued and cross-referenced with historical records of art and folklore to identify patterns and possible origins. The Commission's findings revealed that many of the affected artworks shared certain characteristics: intricate craftsmanship, use of rare pigments or materials, and connections to artists who had engaged with esoteric or alchemical traditions. These discoveries fueled a growing theory that the living portrait phenomenon was not isolated but part of a wider network of animate art, linked through hidden symbolic and energetic correspondences. Some posited that the artworks acted as vessels or nodes within an unseen web of consciousness, capable of influencing susceptible individuals and even entire communities. This hypothesis blurred the boundaries between psychology, metaphysics, and aesthetic experience, inviting interdisciplinary exploration. Public fascination with the phenomena grew, feeding a burgeoning market for enchanted artworks and curiosities. Dealers and collectors sought pieces rumored to possess animate qualities, while exhibitions dedicated to the supernatural aspects of art attracted large audiences. Popular literature and periodicals featured serialized accounts and fictionalized versions of events, weaving the living artworks into the fabric of popular culture and collective imagination. Yet alongside enthusiasm came apprehension. Religious authorities expressed concern over the potential spiritual dangers of engaging with animate art, warning against idolatry and the invocation of malevolent forces. Moralists decried the sensationalism and perceived decadence associated with the phenomena, fearing that society was being led astray by illusions and superstition. These tensions reflected broader Victorian anxieties about modernity, faith, and the limits of human understanding. Amid the swirl of attention, some individuals reported personal encounters with living artworks that left lasting impressions. Artists spoke of moments when their creations seemed to communicate silently, conveying emotions or messages beyond words. Patrons and visitors described feelings of profound connection or unease, as if the artworks possessed agency and intention. These subjective experiences contributed to a growing sense that the relationship between observer and art was transforming, becoming dynamic and reciprocal. The implications extended into philosophical discourse, where thinkers grappled with questions about consciousness, identity, and the nature of reality. The idea that inanimate objects might harbor life challenged materialist assumptions and invited reconsideration of dualistic and panpsychist perspectives. Debates flourished about the possibility that art might serve as a conduit for transcendent truths or alternate dimensions, bridging the human and the ineffable. Within this context, Eliza's story assumed emblematic status. She became a symbol of the mysteries surrounding animate art and the fragile boundary between creation and creator. Her disappearance, far from diminishing her influence, appeared to catalyze the spread of related phenomena, inspiring both hope and fear. The living portrait's legacy was woven into the cultural and intellectual currents of the time, shaping artistic innovation, scientific inquiry, and spiritual exploration. As reports of animate artworks multiplied, so too did efforts to understand and manage their impact. Institutions grappled with questions of preservation, ethics, and public safety. Protocols were developed to study and contain such phenomena, balancing curiosity with caution. The intersection of art, science, and the supernatural became an arena of contestation and collaboration, reflecting the complexities of an age poised between tradition and transformation. In the broader sweep of history, these events foreshadowed future explorations into virtual realities, artificial intelligence, and immersive media, fields that would further blur the lines between representation and existence. The Victorian episode of animate art thus stands as a precursor to ongoing dialogues about the nature of consciousness and the evolving relationship between humanity and its creations. Through this lens, the phenomena that emerged in the wake of Eliza's disappearance can be seen not merely as isolated curiosities, but as manifestations of a profound cultural and metaphysical shift. They invite us to reconsider the boundaries of life and art, the power of imagination, and the enduring human quest to transcend the limits of perception and understanding. In the decades following the extraordinary events surrounding Eliza, a constellation of theories emerged, attempting to unravel the mystery of her nature and legacy. Scholars, artists, theologians, and scientists engaged in spirited debates, each interpreting her existence through the prism of their disciplines and beliefs. The ambiguity of Eliza's origin and the phenomena connected to her defied definitive classification, fostering a rich tapestry of interpretations that reflected the intellectual and cultural currents of the time. One prevailing theory posited that Eliza was a ghostly apparition, a spirit trapped within the confines of the painted portrait, granted temporary corporeal form through unknown forces. Proponents of this view drew upon Victorian spiritualism, which had gained considerable traction in the mid-19th century, embracing the possibility that Eliza's manifestation was a glimpse into the afterlife, or the liminal realm between life and death. Mediums and seance practitioners claimed communication with her spirit, producing messages that were often cryptic, but imbued with a sense of otherworldly wisdom. This perspective resonated with those who sought to reconcile the empirical with the metaphysical, offering comfort and explanation amid the inexplicable. Conversely, some scientists and skeptics argued that Eliza represented an unprecedented scientific anomaly, a living amalgamation of art and matter brought to life through experimental techniques veiled in secrecy. They speculated that Jonathan Harrow, the enigmatic artist, had harnessed a combination of chemistry, optics, and emerging photographic processes to create a new form of life or consciousness. This hypothesis, though controversial, inspired early inquiries into the intersections of biology and technology, foreshadowing later explorations into artificial life and synthetic beings. Critics of this view cautioned against conflating metaphor with reality, emphasizing the need for rigorous evidence and cautioning against mystical interpretations. Artists and philosophers offered a more symbolic interpretation, viewing Eliza as a manifestation of artistic genius and the creative spirit, an embodiment of the muse that transcended mortal limitations. In this reading, Eliza was less a literal being and more an allegory for the power of imagination to breathe life into the inanimate, to animate the soul through art. This interpretation found expression in literature, poetry, and visual arts, where Eliza's story inspired works exploring themes of creation, identity, and the blurred boundaries between reality and illusion. Her legacy became a touchstone for debates about the nature of art, creativity, and the role of the artist as both creator and conduit. The government's Commission for Phenomenal Entities, though disbanded quietly after years of investigation, left behind a trove of documents that continued to fuel speculation. Declassified reports hinted at classified experiments and unexplained phenomena linked to Eliza and similar cases, suggesting that official understanding remained incomplete. The secrecy surrounding these archives contributed to conspiracy theories, positing that Eliza was part of a broader governmental project to harness unknown forces or entities, blending science and occult knowledge. These theories, while lacking concrete proof, captured the public imagination and were reflected in popular fiction and sensational journalism. In academic circles, Eliza's case prompted interdisciplinary dialogues that challenged the rigid boundaries between science, art, and spirituality. Conferences and salons debated the implications of her existence for concepts of consciousness, identity, and the nature of life itself. Philosophers questioned whether traditional definitions of personhood could accommodate a being like Eliza, whose origins and existence straddled multiple domains. These discussions anticipated later developments in cognitive science and philosophy of mind, highlighting Eliza's enduring relevance as a catalyst for inquiry. The enduring mystery of Eliza also inspired early explorations into the possibility of time displacement or temporal anomalies. Some theorists proposed that she might have originated from another era or dimension, her appearance in 19th century London a consequence of a temporal rift or cosmic intersection. This hypothesis drew upon emerging ideas in physics about the nature of time and space, as well as folklore concerning time travelers and otherworldly visitors. Though speculative, such theories contributed to Eliza's mythos as a figure transcending conventional temporal and spatial boundaries. Throughout these interpretations ran a common thread. Eliza represented a challenge to human understanding and an invitation to expand the limits of knowledge. Whether viewed as spirit, scientific marvel, muse, or temporal anomaly, she embodied the tensions and aspirations of her age, a symbol of the unknown and the unknowable. Her story became a mirror, reflecting humanity's desire to grasp the mysteries that lie beyond perception, to reconcile the seen with the unseen, and to find meaning in the face of uncertainty. Eliza's influence extended beyond academic and artistic realms into popular culture and folklore. Tales of her appearances, disappearances, and enigmatic presence circulated widely, often embellished and reinterpreted to suit the sensibilities of different audiences. She became a figure of fascination in ghost stories, theatrical productions, and early cinematic experiments, her image evoking both allure and unease. These cultural representations contributed to the mythologizing of Eliza, ensuring that her narrative persisted across generations. Despite the myriad theories, a consensus remained elusive. The multiplicity of interpretations underscored the complexity of Eliza's phenomenon and the limitations of any single explanatory framework. Her existence occupied a liminal space that resisted reduction, inviting continual re-examination and reinterpretation. This openness ensured that Eliza's story remained a living dialogue, a dynamic interplay between fact, fiction, belief, and inquiry. The legacy of Eliza, preserved in journals, artworks, official records, and oral histories, continued to inspire new generations of thinkers and creators. Her story anticipated contemporary explorations into artificial intelligence, virtual realities, and the nature of consciousness, fields grappling with questions of identity, embodiment, and the boundaries between human and machine. In this light, Eliza can be seen as a precursor to ongoing debates about creation and autonomy, representation and reality. Ultimately, Eliza's enigmatic presence in history serves as a testament to the enduring human quest to transcend limits and to understand the profound mysteries of existence. Her story encourages a spirit of curiosity, tempered by humility, acknowledging that some aspects of reality may remain forever beyond complete comprehension. In embracing this uncertainty, we honor the complexity and wonder that Eliza embodies, a living portrait whose influence continues to ripple through time and thought. The legend of Eliza endures as a profound symbol woven into the tapestry of art history and folklore, embodying the enigmatic boundary where reality and imagination intertwine. Across generations, her story has been retold and reinterpreted, inspiring reflections on the nature of creation, consciousness, and the mysterious forces that blur the line between the tangible and the intangible. Eliza's narrative invites us to reconsider the very essence of what it means to be alive, and to recognize the transformative power of art as a vessel for the ineffable. In the centuries following her first emergence, Eliza's tale has echoed through the corridors of museums, galleries, and literary salons, captivating artists and thinkers alike. Her image, both as the living portrait and the elusive figure who vanished into the night, has become a motif representing the creative spirit's restless quest to transcend limitations. The mythic quality of her existence challenges us to explore the spaces where the material world meets the realm of dreams, where brushstrokes carry the weight of life itself. Modern interpretations have situated Eliza's story within the context of technological and philosophical advancements, particularly in fields such as virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and digital art. Scholars propose that her phenomenon foreshadowed contemporary explorations of simulated consciousness and the merging of human experience with machine-generated realities. The living portrait's ability to traverse the boundaries of paint and flesh resonates with today's endeavors to create immersive environments and sentient digital entities, highlighting enduring questions about identity and presence. Eliza's narrative also serves as a cautionary tale about the ethical dimensions of creation and control. Her confinement, study, and eventual disappearance underscore tensions between human curiosity and respect for autonomy, reflecting ongoing debates about the responsibilities inherent in innovation. The balance between fascination and fear, between the desire to understand and the need to protect, remains a central theme in the discourse her story inspires. Beyond technological parallels, Eliza's legend continues to inspire artistic expressions that grapple with themes of transformation, otherness, and the uncanny. Contemporary artists revisit her image and story through diverse media, painting, sculpture, performance, and digital art, inviting audiences to engage with questions of presence, absence, and the mutable nature of identity. These works often evoke a sense of wonder, tinged with unease, mirroring the complex emotions elicited by Eliza herself. In literary and cinematic realms, Eliza's tale has been reimagined as a metaphor for the creative process and the elusive nature of inspiration. Writers and filmmakers explore her as a figure caught between worlds, embodying the tensions between memory and imagination, reality and illusion. Her story serves as a narrative prism through which to examine human longing for connection, understanding, and transcendence. The enduring fascination with Eliza also reflects broader cultural and philosophical inquiries into the nature of consciousness and the mysteries of existence. Her story challenges reductionist frameworks, inviting consideration of alternative paradigms that embrace ambiguity and complexity. It encourages an openness to phenomena that resist easy explanation, fostering a humility that acknowledges the limits of human knowledge. Eliza's presence in art and thought underscores the power of narratives to shape our perception of reality and to bridge disparate realms of experience. Her living portrait stands as a testament to the capacity of art to evoke life beyond its material confines, to animate the invisible threads that connect creator, creation, and observer. This dynamic interplay continues to captivate and inspire, reminding us that the boundaries we perceive are often permeable, and that mystery remains an integral part of the human condition. As we reflect on Eliza's story, we are invited to embrace the unknown and to recognize the potential for transformation inherent in the act of creation. Her legend challenges us to question the distinctions between the seen and unseen, to explore the spaces where art becomes life, and to honor the enduring power of imagination to shape our world. In doing so, Eliza's narrative transcends its historical moment, becoming a timeless meditation on the interplay of reality and fantasy, presence and absence, and the ever-evolving nature of human experience. Ultimately, the living portrait of Eliza endures not merely as a historical curiosity, but as a symbol of the profound mysteries that lie at the heart of existence. Her story beckons us to continue exploring the boundaries of perception and understanding, to seek connections beyond the visible, and to celebrate the enduring capacity of art to illuminate the depths of the soul. Through this lens, Eliza remains a luminous figure, an eternal muse and enigma, guiding us toward new horizons of wonder and insight.